She was left to die in the snow, but the man who found her changed everything. The night was bitterly cold, and the wind cut through the air like invisible knives. Snow fell steadily, blanketing the ground in a thick, icy white layer. Every step the young woman took seemed heavier than the last. Her legs were numb, her fingers tingled with frost, and her coat offered little protection against the merciless winter. She had been walking for what felt like hours, but the landscape around her remained the same. An endless stretch of white, broken only by the skeletal shapes of trees. Her heart pounded not just from the cold, but from fear and exhaustion. She could barely remember how she had ended up in this desolate place. The events of the day played in her mind like a broken film. It had started as a normal journey. She had been traveling to a distant town, hoping to reach safety and warmth before the snowstorm became too severe. But a series of unfortunate events had turned her journey into a nightmare. A sudden vehicle breakdown had left her stranded. Strangers she had trusted had let her down. And then, somehow, she had become completely alone, with no one around to help her. The snow swirled around her, making it difficult to see even a few steps ahead. Her body trembled uncontrollably, not just from the cold, but from the creeping panic that had begun to settle in her chest. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence of the winter night, the rustle of branches, the distant howl of a wolf, the crunch of snow under her own boots. They all made her heart leap with fear. She knew she had to keep moving, but her strength was fading fast. Each step felt like a monumental effort, as though the snow itself was trying to hold her back. Her mind wandered to thoughts of her family and friends. She imagined their faces, wondering if they knew where she was, or if anyone would come looking for her. The thought that she might be left alone forever in this frozen wilderness made tears sting her eyes. She stumbled over an uneven patch of ice and fell to her knees. The snow clung to her clothing, soaking through and chilling her even more. She pressed her hands to the ground, trying to push herself up, but the icy surface offered no support. She felt the sharp sting of cold against her skin, and a deep despair began to take root. She tried to focus on breathing steadily, telling herself that panic would only make her colder. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering violently, and forced herself to stand. Each movement was painful, but she refused to give in to the cold. Somewhere deep inside, a spark of determination remained. She reminded herself that she had survived difficult situations before. She had always found a way through. She could not let this snowstorm be the end. Hours seemed to pass, though in reality it might have been only minutes. The darkness pressed down on her, broken only by the faint reflection of moonlight on the snow. Her eyes strained to see anything familiar, but the world around her was an endless sea of white. She tried to remember any landmarks from the route she had been following, but the snow had erased all traces. Panic threatened to overtake her again, but she forced herself to take one step at a time. One foot in front of the other, she repeated silently, as though chanting a prayer. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had eaten nothing since morning. The hunger gnawed at her, adding another layer of discomfort to her already miserable condition. She wished she had prepared better, packed more supplies, thought ahead, but it was too late now. She had no choice but to keep moving and hope that help would come before the cold claimed her. Her mind conjured up images of warmth, of a fire, a hot meal, a cozy bed, but each image felt distant and unattainable. As the night deepened, she began to feel the first signs of frostbite. Her fingers and toes went numb, and her lips turned pale. The cold was no longer just uncomfortable. It was dangerous. Her thoughts became muddled, and she struggled to focus on the simplest tasks. She realized that if she didn't find shelter soon, she might not survive. The desperation clawed at her chest, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to sink to the ground, leaning against a tree for support. The snowflakes fell silently on her hair, and she felt a quiet, aching loneliness that seemed almost physical. In that moment of despair, she remembered something her mother had once told her. When everything seems lost, keep moving. Even the smallest step can make a difference. Clinging to that memory, she forced herself to rise again. Her legs were stiff and uncooperative. Her body ached from cold and fatigue, but she could not stop. She walked on, driven by a mixture of fear and hope, even though every instinct screamed that she should collapse and give in. Time became meaningless. The snowstorm raged on, and the world seemed to have disappeared entirely. She began to notice small things, the faint outline of a hill, the distant sound of flowing water, the occasional snap of a branch under the weight of snow. These little details reminded her that she was still alive, still moving, still fighting. And with every tiny step, a fragile thread of hope began to weave itself back into her mind. Her thoughts drifted again to her life before this night. She remembered laughter, conversations, and moments of joy. She remembered the dreams she had once held close, dreams that now seemed fragile and distant. But she also remembered the resilience that had carried her through previous hardships. She had faced challenges before, and she had overcome them. She reminded herself that she was stronger than she felt in this moment. She could survive this. She had to survive. Hours passed, though she could not tell exactly how many. Exhaustion and cold threatened to overwhelm her, but she continued moving. Each step was a battle against her own body, each breath a struggle against the freezing air. And yet, somewhere beyond the haze of snow and darkness, a tiny thought began to flicker. Perhaps someone was out there who could help her. Perhaps she was not entirely alone. That thought, small and fragile as it was, gave her the strength to keep putting one foot in front of the other. As the night wore on, the storm showed no sign of letting up. The snow fell relentlessly, and the wind howled through the trees. But even in the midst of this harsh, unforgiving wilderness, she refused to give up. Her mind clung to the hope of survival, to the possibility that someone might find her, that she might live to see another day. The cold had numbed her body, but it could not touch the determination that burned in her heart. She would not give up. Not yet. And so, with trembling legs and a body on the edge of collapse, she continued through the snow, guided only by instinct, memory, and the stubborn spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. Every step was agony, every movement a test of willpower. Yet she pressed on. Somewhere beyond the endless white, there was a chance for survival. Somewhere, someone might see her, someone might help. And with that thought, she walked on, through the frozen night, clinging to life with every ounce of strength she had left. The wind was relentless, whipping through the trees and carrying with it a biting chill that seemed to cut straight through clothing and bone. In the distance, a man trudged through the snow, his boots leaving deep impressions that would soon vanish under the falling snowflakes. He had been out checking his property after the storm began, making sure the livestock were safe and that the fences had not been damaged. It was a familiar routine for him, one he often performed alone, and he was used to the silence of the snowy wilderness. As he walked, he noticed something unusual. A small, dark shape lay in the distance, half covered by snow and barely distinguishable from the white landscape. His heart skipped a beat. In all his years of walking these woods in winter, he had never seen anything like this. The man hesitated for a moment, unsure if it was an animal or something else. But a faint sound, a low, labored groan, reached his ears, confirming his suspicion that it was a person in trouble. He hurried toward the shape, his breath visible in the cold air, forming clouds that quickly disappeared into the night. As he approached, he could make out the details: a young woman, barely conscious, lying on the frozen ground. Her clothing was soaked through with snow and ice, her face pale and lips tinged with blue. The man felt a surge of urgency. He knew that in this weather, every minute counted. Without immediate help, she might not survive the night. He knelt beside her, carefully checking her condition. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling violently from the cold. He gently shook her shoulder, calling her name, but she did not respond. Panic gripped him for a moment, but he pushed it aside. He had to act quickly. He wrapped his coat around her as best he could, covering her fragile body and trying to trap whatever warmth remained. The man knew that moving her would be difficult. The snow was deep, the ground uneven, and her body was weak. Yet he could not leave her there. He carefully lifted her into his arms, feeling her small, fragile weight against his chest. Every step he took was a struggle, his boots sinking into the snow with each movement. The cold seemed harsher now, as if the wind itself was testing his determination. But he pressed on, guided by the knowledge that her life depended on his effort. As he carried her through the snow, he noticed the signs of frostbite on her fingers and cheeks. Her lips were chapped and blue, and her breathing grew slower with each passing minute. He whispered words of encouragement, hoping she could hear him even in her weakened state. "You'll be okay," he murmured. "I've got you. Just hold on." He knew that speaking aloud helped him focus, gave him strength to keep moving, even though the cold threatened to numb his own body. The forest around them was silent, except for the crunch of snow under his boots and the occasional creak of a branch under the weight of ice. The man kept his eyes on the path ahead, scanning for any sign of shelter or protection from the storm. He thought of the nearby cabin he knew was only a short distance away. It was not much, just a small structure with a wood stove, but it was warm, and it could save her life. With renewed determination, he quickened his pace, navigating through the uneven terrain and carefully avoiding hidden obstacles under the snow. At last, the cabin came into view. Its wooden walls were dusted with snow and smoke curled from the chimney, a sign that someone had been keeping the fire alive. The man's heart lifted at the sight. Hope surged within him, and he moved faster, carefully carrying the woman across the final stretch of snow-covered ground. The door to the cabin creaked as he pushed it open, and the warmth inside enveloped them both. He gently laid her down on a makeshift bed, covering her with blankets and removing the wet clothing that made her shiver even more. He worked quickly, starting a fire in the stove and adding more wood to build warmth. The flames crackled and danced, sending a comforting glow across the cabin. The man knew that the cold had already done serious damage, but he hoped that with heat and care, the woman could recover. He checked her pulse and breathing, relieved to find that she was still alive. It was a small victory, but in that moment, it felt enormous. The woman began to stir slightly, her eyes fluttering open. Confusion and fear filled her gaze, and she struggled to speak. Where am I?" she whispered, her voice weak and hoarse. The man smiled gently, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "You're safe now," he said. "I found you in the snow." "You're going to be okay." He spoke slowly, carefully, wanting her to understand that she was no longer alone. As the woman began to recover slightly, the man offered her warm tea and small sips of water. Her hands shook as she tried to hold the cup, but he steadied it for her. Every movement was a test of strength, and he encouraged her gently, offering words of reassurance. The warmth of the tea spread through her body, easing some of the numbness and giving her a little more energy. The man sat nearby, keeping watch, making sure she did not fall asleep too deeply and that she remained safe. Throughout the night, he worked tirelessly, bringing more blankets, checking her condition, and feeding the fire to keep the cabin warm. He told her simple stories to distract her from the pain and fear. Stories about the forest, the animals, and the small joys of life, even in the harshest conditions. Slowly, she began to relax, trusting him more with each passing hour. The fear that had consumed her in the snowstorm began to fade, replaced by a fragile sense of safety. The man learned about her journey as she gained strength. She told him about the accident, the breakdown, and how she had been left alone in the storm. He listened patiently, offering comfort without judgment. She realized that despite everything, there were still good people in the world, willing to help without expecting anything in return. The experience was humbling for both of them. He was reminded of the fragility of life, and she discovered the power of kindness and human connection. By morning, the woman was more alert, her shivering reduced, and her strength slowly returning. The cabin, though simple and isolated, had become a sanctuary, a place of warmth and safety. The man and the woman shared a quiet moment by the fire, understanding without words the bond that had formed between them. It was a bond born from trust, survival, and compassion, a connection that neither had anticipated but both valued deeply. As the snowstorm subsided, the man knew that he would help her return to civilization, to a place where she could fully recover and rebuild her life. But even as he prepared to guide her out of the forest, he realized that the experience had changed them both. He had discovered the profound difference one person could make in another's life, and she had experienced the transformative power of being rescued, cared for, and seen in her most vulnerable moment. Together they stepped outside into the fresh, crisp air of the morning. The world seemed different now, brighter, quieter, and filled with possibility. The snow that had once seemed like a barrier now glistened like diamonds under the rising sun. And in that moment, the woman understood something she would never forget. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness could become the most powerful force in the face of despair. After the snowstorm had passed, the young woman began to regain her strength, slowly but steadily. The warmth of the cabin and the care of the man had brought her back from the edge of danger, yet she still felt weak and fragile. Every movement was an effort, and she had to remind herself to breathe, to keep going, and to trust that she would fully recover. The fear that had gripped her in the snowstorm lingered like a shadow, but it was now softened by the safety she felt in the cabin. The man was patient and gentle, understanding that recovery took both time and care. He helped her change into dry clothes, offering small comforts whenever he could. He made sure that she had plenty to eat, preparing simple meals of warm soup and bread. Each bite gave her a little more strength, and each sip of tea seemed to chase away some of the lingering cold from her body. He never rushed her, never demanded that she do more than she could. Instead, he let her progress at her own pace, giving her space to heal physically and emotionally. During the days that followed, the woman began to reflect on what had happened. She thought about the snowstorm, the isolation, and the terror she had felt when she realized she was truly alone. Those memories were painful, yet they also made her feel grateful. Grateful for the man who had found her, grateful for the warmth and safety of the cabin, and grateful for the chance to live another day. She realized how quickly life could change, and how small acts of care and courage could make the difference between life and death. The man, too, found himself reflecting. He had seen the fragility of life in her condition, and had felt the weight of responsibility when he found her in the snow. Yet he also felt a quiet pride in knowing that he had acted without hesitation, guided by empathy and a sense of duty. In caring for her, he discovered something about himself. the importance of human connection, the power of small, selfless acts, and the deep satisfaction that comes from helping someone in need. Each day, the woman's strength improved. She could sit by the fire for longer periods without shivering, and she began to walk around the cabin, testing her legs and feet. She noticed the frostbite on her fingers slowly fading, and her cheeks regained some color. With each improvement, her confidence grew, and the fear that had once consumed her began to recede. She realized that the ordeal had changed her, not just her body, but her perspective on life. She understood that survival was not only about physical strength, but also about resilience, hope, and trust in others. As she regained her energy, the bond between the man and the woman grew stronger. They shared stories of their lives, their past experiences, and the challenges they had faced. The woman spoke of her family, her dreams, and the journey that had led her into the snowstorm. The man shared tales of his life in the wilderness, his work, and the moments that had taught him the value of patience and perseverance. Through these conversations, they discovered a shared sense of humanity, a mutual respect that went beyond simple gratitude. The woman also began to notice the small ways the man cared for her. He would check her blankets at night to make sure she was warm, bring her hot drinks when she woke shivering, and quietly adjust the fire to maintain a comfortable temperature. He never forced her to speak or do anything she wasn't ready for. Instead, he let her set the pace for their interactions. These gestures, though simple, made her feel safe and valued. She realized that true care often came in quiet, thoughtful actions rather than grand declarations. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the cabin window, the woman attempted to stand on her own. Her legs were still weak, and she felt a twinge of fear that she might collapse. But the man was there, steadying her with a gentle hand. She took a few steps, and then a few more, until she could walk across the cabin without support. The sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. She laughed softly, tears of relief and joy filling her eyes. In that moment, she understood that recovery was not just physical. It was a reclaiming of her independence, a reclaiming of control over her own life. The man watched her with quiet satisfaction, knowing that she was finding her strength again. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not because of anything he had done for himself, but because he had made a real difference in someone else's life. He realized that the most meaningful moments often came from acts of kindness and courage in times of crisis, and that the bonds formed in adversity could be incredibly strong. As the days turned into a week, the woman began to take more initiative. She helped with preparing meals, tending the fire, and organizing the small space of the cabin. Each task was a step toward regaining her independence and rebuilding her confidence. She found that her fear of the cold and the wilderness, which had once been overwhelming, was slowly replaced by a cautious respect for the environment around her. She understood that she had been vulnerable, but she also recognized her own resilience and the importance of careful preparation and awareness. During this time, the man also taught her basic survival skills. He showed her how to identify safe paths through the snow, how to start a fire, and how to find signs of danger in the wilderness. He was patient, never rushing her, and he emphasized that knowledge and preparation were essential for safety. The woman absorbed these lessons eagerly, knowing that they could be vital if she ever faced danger again. She felt empowered by the skills she was learning, and the sense of competence added to her growing confidence. Despite the warmth of the cabin and the growing bond between them, the woman sometimes felt a pang of fear and doubt. She wondered if she would ever truly feel safe in the world again, if she would ever trust people as easily as she had before. The man reassured her, not with promises, but with steady, consistent actions that proved he could be trusted. He listened to her fears without judgment, encouraged her to express her emotions, and offered support without taking control. Slowly, the walls she had built around herself began to soften. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of pink and orange, they sat together by the fire. The woman realized that she had never felt such calm and comfort in her life. The storm had tested her in unimaginable ways, but it had also led her to someone who genuinely cared for her well-being. She felt gratitude not just for being rescued, but for the opportunity to learn, grow, and heal in a place that felt safe. The man, in turn, felt a sense of connection that he had not experienced before, a bond forged in trust, kindness, and shared humanity. By the end of the second week, the woman was strong enough to leave the cabin briefly. They walked outside together, the snow sparkling in the sunlight, the air crisp and invigorating. Each step she took was a reminder of how far she had come, from a weak, frozen, frightened woman struggling to survive, to someone regaining control of her life. The man stayed close, ready to support her if needed, but he also allowed her to move freely, showing confidence in her recovery. These moments of freedom and self-discovery were crucial for the woman. She realized that survival was not only about enduring hardship, but also about reclaiming joy, hope, and agency in life. The world outside the cabin, once terrifying and dangerous, began to feel alive with possibility. She laughed more, spoke more freely, and allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the snowstorm, beyond the fear, and beyond the helplessness she had felt when she was found. Throughout her recovery, the man and the woman shared a quiet understanding. They did not need to speak constantly. Their actions, care, and presence spoke volumes. They had both been changed by the ordeal, the woman by her near-death experience, and the man by the profound impact of saving a life. They understood that the bond they shared was rooted in trust, compassion, and the recognition of each other's strength and vulnerability. As the days continued, the woman began to plan for her life beyond the cabin. She knew she could not stay there forever, but she felt prepared to face the world again. The skills she had learned, the confidence she had regained, and the emotional support she had received would guide her forward. And though the storm had brought fear and danger, it had also brought her to someone who had shown her the power of kindness, courage, and human connection. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the woman and the man grew stronger. What had started as a relationship born from necessity, him saving her life, gradually transformed into a genuine friendship. They spent hours together in the cabin, sharing stories, laughing softly, and learning more about each other's lives. It was a quiet companionship built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding, and both began to realize how much they had come to value one another's presence. The woman had grown stronger, both physically and emotionally. She could now move freely through the cabin, tend to the fire, and prepare meals without assistance. The winter wilderness, which had once seemed terrifying and oppressive, no longer felt like a threat. She had learned how to navigate the snow safely, recognize signs of danger, and respect the harshness of nature without fear. The skills she had acquired from the man were empowering, and they gave her confidence that she could face challenges on her own. For the man, the woman's recovery was a source of joy and pride. He had saved her life, yes, but he realized that the deeper satisfaction came from watching her regain her independence. Each small accomplishment, a meal prepared, a walk outside, a laugh shared, was a reminder of her resilience and courage. He admired her determination, her ability to face fear without surrendering to it, and the way she embraced life even after such a traumatic experience. Their friendship deepened as they recognized the strength and goodness in each other. Together, they explored the forest around the cabin during daylight hours. The woman discovered the beauty of the winter landscape, the way the sunlight glinted off snow, how the trees stood strong against the wind, and how the forest, though harsh, held a quiet majesty. The man showed her hidden paths, safe spots near the stream, and places where wildlife might be seen. They shared small adventures, often walking in silence, enjoying each other's company and the calm of the snow-covered world. These moments strengthened their connection and helped the woman rebuild her confidence in life and people. As they spent time together, conversations grew deeper. The woman shared her dreams and regrets, her fears and hopes, while the man spoke of lessons he had learned from his own life in the wilderness. She realized that he had faced challenges of his own, struggles that had shaped his character and his sense of empathy. Their stories intertwined in quiet, meaningful ways, and both began to understand the importance of resilience, courage, and compassion in navigating life's difficulties. The man also helped her confront her lingering fears. There were moments when the woman would flinch at the sound of the wind or hesitate before stepping onto a snow-covered path. Instead of dismissing her fears, he encouraged her to face them slowly, offering support and guidance. He explained that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Each small victory over fear strengthened her sense of self and reinforced the bond between them. She felt safe, not because danger had disappeared, but because she had someone she could rely on and trust completely. Even in simple daily tasks, their friendship grew. They cooked together, fetched water, chopped wood, and repaired small things in the cabin. Each action became a lesson in cooperation, patience, and respect. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to offer help without being asked, and to communicate with a quiet understanding. These small gestures, though ordinary, formed the foundation of a deep and meaningful connection that neither had expected, but both cherished. The woman also began to reflect on her life before the snowstorm. She realized how much she had taken for granted: friendships, family, and even the safety of her everyday routine. Her ordeal had opened her eyes to the fragility of life and the importance of kindness and empathy. She began to see the man not only as her savior, but also as a guide and companion who had shown her what human connection could truly mean. His patience, generosity, and quiet strength left a lasting impression on her, inspiring her to approach life with a renewed sense of purpose. As their friendship deepened, they began to plan for the future. The woman knew she would eventually need to leave the cabin, to return to the world beyond the forest, but she no longer felt afraid. She felt prepared, not just because of the skills she had learned, but because she had gained a deeper understanding of herself and the people around her. The man offered guidance and support, helping her consider practical steps for her next chapter, while encouraging her to embrace the lessons she had learned during her recovery. Through these conversations and plans, the woman discovered a sense of independence she had never felt before. She realized that surviving the storm had not only saved her life physically, but had also awakened a new strength within her. She was capable of making decisions, taking risks, and trusting herself as much as she trusted the man who had saved her. The ordeal had transformed her, teaching her resilience, patience, and the value of kindness in human relationships. For the man, the experience was transformative as well. He had always lived a quiet, solitary life, accustomed to the routine of the wilderness and the isolation it often brought. But through helping the woman, he discovered the joy and fulfillment of meaningful human connection. He realized that life was not only about survival, but also about the bonds we form and the impact we have on each other's lives. He found himself inspired by her courage, and in turn, he inspired her by showing what compassion and empathy could achieve. Their friendship also carried moments of humor and lightness, helping to balance the intensity of the past weeks. They laughed over small mishaps, shared stories that brought smiles to their faces, and found joy in simple pleasures: a warm fire, a sunny morning, or a quiet walk in the snow. These moments reinforced their bond, showing that even after hardship, life could still hold happiness and connection. Over time, the woman became more independent in her movements and decisions. She could navigate the forest confidently, manage the cabin, and care for herself in ways she had never imagined. Yet she also valued the man's presence, knowing that his guidance and support had been essential to her recovery. Their relationship was no longer defined by need or obligation, but by genuine respect and friendship. They had become partners in navigating life's challenges, and each had found in the other a source of strength and inspiration. As winter slowly gave way to early signs of spring, the woman began to see the world in a new light. The snow melted in patches, streams began to flow more freely, and the forest came alive with the subtle signs of life returning. This change mirrored her own transformation, from a woman who had been frozen, fearful, and alone, to someone who was strong, confident, and connected to another human being in a meaningful way. She realized that life could be harsh and unpredictable, but it could also be beautiful, full of hope, friendship, and unexpected kindness. The man and the woman continued to support each other, not because they had to, but because they genuinely cared for one another. Their bond had grown beyond the moment of crisis, extending into a lasting friendship built on trust, compassion, and shared experience. Each day they spent together reinforced their respect and admiration for one another, and they found comfort in knowing that someone else truly understood and valued them. Through this process, the woman learned that transformation often comes from facing challenges with courage and openness. She saw how the kindness of one person, the man who had saved her life, could have a ripple effect, changing not only her survival, but her perspective, confidence, and understanding of human connection. She realized that even in the harshest conditions, people could inspire change, hope, and growth in one another. By the end of this part of their journey, both the woman and the man had been profoundly changed. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more self-reliant, and he had discovered the profound fulfillment of caring deeply for another person. Together they had built a friendship that would endure beyond the walls of the cabin, one that would continue to influence their choices, values, and understanding of life itself. Their experiences had taught them both that true connection could arise from the most challenging circumstances, and that the power of empathy, kindness, and shared humanity could transform lives in ways they had never. The first signs of spring brought a sense of hope and renewal to the forest. The snow had begun to melt, revealing the earth beneath and the delicate shoots of grass pushing their way through the soil. Birds returned, filling the air with their songs, and the sunlight grew warmer, casting a golden glow over the landscape. For the woman, this changing season mirrored her own journey, a transformation from fear and weakness to strength, confidence, and hope. She had survived the snowstorm, healed from her injuries, and discovered a resilience within herself that she had never known before. Although the cabin had been a sanctuary during the harsh winter, she knew it was time to leave. The world beyond the forest awaited, full of possibilities and challenges. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, wondering what her next chapter would hold. Yet, unlike before, she did not feel afraid. She had been tested by the storm, faced death, and had emerged stronger. The lessons she had learned during her recovery had equipped her not only with survival skills, but also with a new perspective on life and human connection. The man had become more than just her rescuer. He was her friend, mentor, and guide. They spent the final days together preparing for her departure, discussing her plans, and ensuring she had everything she needed to move forward safely. He shared advice for navigating the world beyond the forest, taught her how to continue using the skills she had learned, and reminded her to trust herself and her instincts. At the same time, he encouraged her to embrace opportunities, follow her dreams, and never underestimate her own strength. As they walked together through the forest one last time, the woman reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the night she had been left alone in the snow, cold, terrified, and unsure if she would survive. That memory, once filled with fear and despair, now reminded her of the power of perseverance and the kindness of others. She realized that her life had been changed forever, not just by the danger she had faced, but by the man who had risked his own safety to save her. The bond they had formed was enduring, rooted in trust, compassion, and shared experience. The woman had grown not only physically stronger, but also emotionally resilient. She had learned that strength was not the absence of fear, but the ability to continue despite it. She had learned that asking for help was not a weakness, but a step toward growth and survival. Most importantly, she had learned that kindness could transform lives, and that the connections we form with others could guide us through even the darkest moments. These lessons would remain with her long after she left the forest and the man who had saved her life. Before departing, they spent one final night in the cabin together. The fire crackled softly, casting warm light across the room. They shared a quiet meal, talking about the journey they had experienced and the lessons they had learned. The woman expressed her gratitude, her voice filled with emotion. She thanked him for saving her life, for teaching her, and for showing her what true kindness looked like. The man, in turn, expressed his admiration for her courage, resilience, and determination. In those words, unspoken yet deeply felt, they both acknowledged the profound impact they had had on each other's lives. When morning came, the woman packed her belongings, making sure to include the small items that had comforted her during her recovery: a warm blanket, a notebook where she had written her thoughts, and the simple tools the man had taught her to use. She felt ready, not just to leave the cabin, but to step into the wider world with confidence and hope. The man helped her carry her pack, offering encouragement and advice for the journey ahead. Their hands brushed as they exchanged a final, heartfelt farewell, and in that moment, they understood that their connection would endure, even across distance and time. As she stepped outside, the sunlight warmed her face, and the fresh air filled her lungs. The world felt alive and full of possibilities. She looked back at the cabin, the place where she had recovered, grown stronger, and formed a lifelong bond. It was a place of safety and learning, a symbol of resilience and human kindness. She felt a sense of gratitude for the storm that had brought her there, even though it had been terrifying and dangerous. Without that experience, she would never have discovered the depths of her own strength, nor the generosity of another human being. The journey ahead would not be without challenges. She knew there would be obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt, yet she also knew that she had the tools, knowledge, and inner strength to face them. She would carry the lessons of the forest and the guidance of the man who had saved her wherever she went. She understood that life could be unpredictable and harsh, but that she was capable of overcoming difficulties, embracing opportunities, and finding hope even in the darkest moments. As she walked down the snowy path that led away from the cabin, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each step was a reminder of the strength she had gained, the fear she had overcome, and the friendship that had supported her through the storm. She realized that life was not only about surviving adversity, but also about embracing growth, forming connections, and appreciating the kindness of others. She carried these lessons in her heart, knowing that they would guide her through all the challenges and joys that lay ahead. The man watched her go, a quiet pride and satisfaction in his heart. He knew that she was ready to face the world, to continue her journey with confidence and hope. He understood that his role in her life had been significant, yet he also recognized that her strength, courage, and resilience had brought her to this point. In helping her, he had learned the importance of empathy, the power of human connection, and the profound impact one person could have on another. Their bond would endure, a testament to the life-changing power of kindness and trust. As the woman disappeared into the distance, the man returned to the cabin reflecting on the journey they had shared. He thought about the storm, the rescue, and the weeks of recovery and growth. He realized that life was fragile, but it was also filled with opportunities for compassion and connection. The experience had changed him as much as it had changed her, reminding him of the value of empathy, courage, and the simple yet profound act of being there for someone in need. The woman, walking toward the next chapter of her life, felt a sense of freedom and hope she had never known before. The world, once filled with fear and uncertainty, now seemed full of possibility. She understood that life could be unpredictable, that hardships could arise without warning, but that she was capable of facing them with courage, wisdom, and the support of those she trusted. She carried with her the lessons of the forest, the guidance of the man, and the memory of a bond that had transformed her life forever. In the days and weeks that followed, the woman settled into her new life, applying the lessons she had learned during her recovery. She approached challenges with confidence, faced obstacles with determination, and cultivated meaningful relationships with those around her. She never forgot the kindness of the man who had saved her life, nor the strength she had discovered within herself. The experience had shaped her in profound ways, teaching her that hope, courage, and compassion were powerful forces capable of transforming even the most difficult circumstances. Though the cabin remained behind her and the forest gradually faded from view, the memory of the snowstorm and the man's courage stayed with her. She knew that she had been given a second chance, not only at life, but at understanding the true value of human connection. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, ready to embrace the future with an open heart and a determined spirit. In time, the woman and the man remained in contact, their bond enduring across distance and time. They celebrated each other's successes, offered support during hardships, and continued to inspire one another with their resilience and courage. Their story became a testament to the power of empathy, kindness, and the ways in which one person's actions could profoundly change the life of another. In the end, the woman realized that being left in the snow had not been the end of her story, but rather the beginning of a journey that would shape her life forever. She had faced the harshest elements, confronted fear and despair, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to the world around her. And she understood that sometimes, even in the darkest moments, hope could be found in the presence of another person willing to extend kindness, courage, and care. Her life, once fragile and uncertain, had been transformed,